Clint raced through the sleek corridors of Andromeda Station University, his mag boots clanging on the metallic floor. Damn artificial gravity and his malfunctioning alarm chrono. Late again for xenobiology, and Professor Zorek was going to have his hide. He couldn't afford to flunk this class. Not when he was the only human student in the entire Alien Federation. Talk about pressure to represent his species. He stumbled through the door of the lecture hall, mumbling apologies, and froze. There at the front of the class, perched on the demo table with her long legs crossed, was Trinity, the stunningly gorgeous Zolothian girl he'd been crushing on all semester. Her pale blue skin shimmered under the astrolights, silver hair cascading over her delicate pointed ears, and not much else. She was wearing some kind of sheer, strategically draped gown that left very little to the imagination. Clint gulped and tried not to stare as he slid into a seat in the back, feeling his face flush. What was she doing up there? Professor Zorek, a tentacle cephaloid, cleared his throat. "Thank you for joining us, Cadet Clint. How good of you to grace us with your presence for today's special lesson. As I was saying, Trinity has generously volunteered to help demonstrate some unique aspects of Zolothian anatomy and reproductive biology. I expect you all to observe with the utmost scientific detachment and maturity." Trinity locked eyes with Clint and winked, a smirk playing at the corners of her full violet lips. He squirmed in his seat, suddenly feeling far too warm. This had to be some kind of dream or nightmare. Professor Zorek dimmed the lights and activated a holo display above the table. Now, as you can see from this diagram, Zolothians have some fascinating biological adaptations. In addition to the standard binary reproductive organs, females of the species possess 2 extra orifices that serve specialized functions in their complex mating rituals. Clint tried to focus on taking notes as the professor droned on, but his eyes kept being drawn back to Trinity's lissom blue form. As Zorek pointed out various anatomical features on the display, she shifted her pose, arching her back and running a hand down her curves, as if to give him a better view. The first auxiliary orifice has bioluminescent properties and emits a pheromonal scent during arousal to attract potential mates. Observe as I apply a gentle stimulus. Clint watched, mouth agape, as the professor stroked a finger along a spot on Trinity's lower abdomen, and it began to glow with an ethereal violet light. An intoxicating, musky perfume filled the air, and Clint heard the other male students start to make appreciative noises. Trinity just smiled enigmatically and gave a little shimmy. This was so far beyond the realm of normal human sex ed, he thought he might pass out. The professor continued on, seemingly oblivious to the effect the demonstration was having on the class. The secondary orifice is even more intriguing. During the height of their estrous cycle, it secretes a potent aphrodisiac enzyme that, when combined with the saliva of their chosen mate, triggers a powerful bonding and shared pleasure response. Xenobiologists theorize this is a vestigial adaptation to ensure favorable pair bonding. At the word saliva, Trinity made a show of slowly licking her lips, her violet tongue darting out to moisten them. Then, holding Clint's gaze, she gradually slipped one strap of her gauzy garment down her shoulder, revealing more of her perfect azure skin. Clint felt a bead of sweat trickle down his neck as he white-knuckled his desk. This was torture. After what felt like an eternity, Professor Zorek finally shut off the holo display. "Well, I think that should give you all a solid foundation in the basics of Zolothian reproductive anatomy. Let's give a round of applause to our brave volunteer Trinity." The class erupted in cheers and whistles as Trinity hopped down from the table and took a little bow, blowing a kiss to her adoring audience. Clint just sat there in a daze, feeling like his brain had short-circuited. As the other students filed out, he took his time gathering up his notes, hoping the flush would fade from his cheeks. He had just stood up to leave when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Trinity standing there with a mischievous grin, having slipped back into her gown. Her scent was even more overwhelming up close, like a field of exotic alien flowers. "Hey there, Cadet Clint. Enjoy the show," she purred, her voice like honey. It was very educational," he stammered, trying to keep his eyes on her face and not the tantalizing curves of her body. I bet. You know, I've always been fascinated by human anatomy too. Maybe you could return the favor sometime and give me a private lesson?" She walked her fingers up his chest suggestively. Clint's heart hammered against his ribs. Was she serious? Sure. I mean, if you really want to learn more about human biology, I'd be happy to study with you." "Oh, I definitely want to learn more. All about your species' mating habits and reproductive structures. I hear you humans can be quite innovative." She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "My dormitory tonight. 2100 hours. Don't be late this time." With that, she turned on her heel and sauntered off, her hips swaying hypnotically. Clint just stood there, gaping after her, hardly believing what had just happened. He was in way over his head with this girl. But damn if he wasn't looking forward to every minute of his xenobiology lessons starting tonight. This was going to be one hell of a semester. Clint stood outside Trinity's dormitory room, nervously adjusting his collar. He'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on what he hoped was a suitably suave yet casual look. A fitted black flight suit with subtle red piping that brought out his chiseled jawline and broad shoulders. He wanted to impress Trinity, but didn't want to seem like he was trying too hard. He took a deep breath, savoring her lingering scent on his skin from their earlier encounter, and knocked. The door slid open and Trinity greeted him with a dazzling smile, her violet eyes sparkling with mischief. She had changed into a silky, translucent robe that clung to her curves in all the right places, the material shimmering as she moved. Don't you clean up nice," she purred, running a finger down his chest. "I was starting to think you might stand me up, cadet." "Wouldn't dream of it," Clint managed, trying to keep his cool as she took his hand and pulled him into the room. "I've been looking forward to our private lesson all day." "So have I," Trinity grinned, leading him over to a plush sofa strewn with cushions. The lights were low and some kind of trippy alien ambient music played softly in the background. "I hope you're ready for a very hands-on learning experience." She pushed him down onto the sofa and straddled his lap, looping her arms around his neck. Clint's hands instinctively went to her hips as she leaned in close, her lips hovering just inches from his. He could feel the heat radiating off her skin, smell the intoxicating perfume of her arousal. Just as their lips were about to meet, the door to the adjoining bathroom suddenly whooshed open in a cloud of scented steam. Out stepped another female Zolothian, this one with emerald green skin and a wild mane of purple hair. She was clad in only a tiny towel that barely covered her ample assets. "Oh, I didn't realize we had company," the green girl trilled, not sounding surprised at all. "Trinity, you naughty thing! You didn't tell me you were bringing a playmate home?" Trinity rolled her eyes and climbed off Clint's lap with a sigh. "Clint, this is my roommate Zephyra. Zeph, this is Clint, the human I was telling you about." "Ooh, a human. How exotic," Zephyr squealed, sauntering over to get a closer look at him. Her towel chose that moment to accidentally slip off, revealing her nude green glory. "I've never had the pleasure of studying human anatomy up close before." Clint's jaw hit the floor. This had to be some kind of adolescent fantasy come to life. 2 gorgeous alien babes, both apparently very into him. He was either the luckiest guy in the galaxy, or this was all going to blow up spectacularly in his face. Trinity shot her roommate an annoyed look and grabbed her robe, tossing it to her. "Down, girl, this one's mine. I saw him first." Zephyr pouted but obediently put on the robe, making sure to let it fall open strategically. "Oh, but you know I'm fascinated by interspecies biology too. Couldn't we share just this once?" "I promise I'll be gentle." She plopped herself down on the couch next to Clint and ran a fingertip along his ear, making him shiver. He looked back and forth between the 2 alien vixens, torn between titillation and terror. Trinity crossed her arms and huffed. "I suppose we could take turns with our human guinea pig here. For science, of course." Zephyra clapped her hands excitedly and bounced in her seat, making the robe gape open again. "Yay! Xenobiology study party. I'll go replicate us some drinks to set the mood." She leapt up and pranced over to a complicated-looking device in the corner that Clint assumed was the alien equivalent of a minibar. This was all moving way faster than he'd anticipated. Not that he was complaining exactly, but he was starting to feel a bit like a hunk of meat between 2 ravenous alien carnivores. Trinity seemed to sense his hesitation and took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Hey, we don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. I know Zeph can come on a little strong, but she means well. We can keep this strictly PG if you prefer. Just some interspecies flirting between friends." Clint looked into her earnest violet eyes and felt his reservations melting away. Sure, this was all kinds of crazy and overwhelming, but how often did a chance like this come along? To intimately connect with not 1 but 2 fascinating alien females, to boldly go where no human had gone before? He squeezed her hand back and gave her a lopsided grin. "I think I'm up for a little xenobiological exploration, as long as we take things slow. I'm not sure my poor human physiology can handle you 2 at full throttle." Trinity laughed and leaned in to brush her lips softly against his, setting off fireworks behind his eyes. "Don't worry, we'll be gentle with you. At first, but something tells me you're more resilient than you think." Just then, Zephyr returned with a tray of smoking, neon-colored drinks, passing them out with a wink. "All right, my little test subjects, bottoms up. Let's see what kind of chemistry we can create tonight." As Clint sipped the bubbling, iridescent liquid, feeling it tingle all the way down, he had a feeling he was in for a study session he would never forget. And he was more than okay with that. As the exotic alien liquor worked its tingling magic through Clint's system, he found himself sandwiched between Trinity and Zephyr on the couch, the two Zalothian beauties pressing against him on either side. They took turns feeding him strange but delicious tidbits from the snack tray, their fingers lingering on his lips. I love watching him eat," Zephyr purred, her emerald eyes heavy-lidded. "The way his jaw muscles flex, the bob of his throat as he swallows. It's so primal." Trinity rolled her eyes. "You think everything is sexy. I bet you get hot watching him recalibrate a flux capacitor." "Ooh, only if he did it shirtless and sweaty," Zephyr giggled, running a finger down Clint's chest. "I wonder what other hidden talents our human has." Clint nearly choked on a shimmering purple berry. These girls were going to be the death of him, but what a way to go. He took a big swig of his drink to cover his nerves. Trinity grinned and plucked the empty glass from his hand. "Easy there, space cowboy. That stuff packs a punch for humans. We want you coherent for the main event." "The main event?" Clint squeaked, his imagination running wild. "Our xenobiology trivia game, silly." Zephyr produced a shiny silver orb from somewhere and held it up. "It's a Zalothian party tradition. We take turns asking each other questions about our species' biology and behavior, and if you get one wrong," she lowered her voice to a stage whisper, "you have to remove an article of clothing." Clint gulped. Strip trivia? He was so dead. His knowledge of alien anatomy began and ended with what little he gleaned from today's class. Trinity patted his knee reassuringly. "Don't worry, we'll start you off easy," she winked. "Zeph, you go first." Zephyr tapped her chin thoughtfully, then grinned. "All right, human. What is the average body temperature of a Zalothian female in degrees Celsius?" Clint racked his brain, trying to remember if that had come up in lecture. 42 degrees? Zephyr made a buzzer sound. "Ooh, so close. It's 39.8 degrees. Guess that means..." She reached out and slowly unzipped his flight suit to the waist, exposing his toned chest. Very nice for a mammal." Clint blushed but shrugged out of the top of his suit, figuring fair was fair. Trinity's eyes raked appreciatively over his physique as well. "My turn," she declared, shifting to face him. "What is the Zalothian organ responsible for producing our pheromonal mating scent?" Clint thought hard, picturing the diagram from class. "The zygophilic gland." Trinity beamed. "Gold star for the human." "Okay, stud, your turn to ask one of us a question. Make it count." And so the game continued, the questions getting more and more risque as they went. Clint managed to hold his own, but still ended up stripped down to his skivvies, while the girls had only shed a few strategic accessories. Not that he was complaining about the view. Finally, Zephyr asked him a stumper about Zalothian erogenous zones, and he threw up his hands in defeat. All right, I'm out of my depth here. I concede to the resident sexperts." The girls high-fived and did a little victory shimmy. Does that mean we get to claim our prize now?" Zephyr cooed, eyeing Clint like he was a piece of meat. Trinity swatted her arm. "Down, girl. I think our poor human needs a breather before we eat him." She turned to Clint with a gentler smile. "Why don't we all relax in the sonic hot tub for a bit? It'll give you a chance to recharge." Clint nodded gratefully, though the thought of being naked in bubbling water with the two of them wasn't exactly stress-reducing. Still, he gamely followed them to the ensuite bathroom, which was bigger than his whole dorm room. The sonic tub was already fizzing invitingly, glowing with soft bioluminescence. Trinity and Zephyr shed their remaining clothes unself-consciously and slipped into the water, sighing with pleasure. They looked at Clint expectantly. "Come on in, the sonic waves are fine," Trinity coaxed, patting the surface. "We promise not to peek much." Blushing furiously, Clint stripped off his briefs and quickly submerged himself between them, the effervescent energy dancing over his sensitive skin. It was unlike anything he'd ever felt before, simultaneously soothing and stimulating. Trinity sidled up to him, her slick blue skin gliding against his under the water. "See, isn't this nice? Just three friends, chilling in the tub, no funny business." As she said it, he felt her hands skate up his thigh beneath the bubbles, getting dangerously close to his danger zone. He yelped and jerked away reflexively. At the same moment, Zephyr made her move, pressing her ample emerald assets against his back as she reached around to trace patterns on his chest. So tense. You need to learn to relax, baby. Clint squirmed between them, torn between excitement and panic. He was only human, and there was only so much his poor male physiology could take. He needed to tap out before he embarrassed himself. I think I'm overheating, he stammered, extricating himself from their roaming hands and hauling himself out of the tub. Wow, would you look at the time? I should really get back to my dorm and, study for class. Thanks for a lovely evening, ladies. He scrambled to throw his clothes back on, not even bothering with his briefs, and beat a hasty retreat from the bathroom. Trinity and Zephyra watched him go with matching pouts. "Oh, I think we broke him," Zephyra sighed. "I forgot how delicate human males can be." "We'll have to be more gentle next time," Trinity mused. "Build up his stamina slowly. After all, we have all semester to experiment." As Clint stumbled back to his room, still buzzing from the alien liquor and sexual frustration, he couldn't help but grin. He had a feeling his xenobiology education was just getting started, and he was one eager student. The next day in xenobiology class, Professor Zorek announced a special research project. "Since we've been studying the fascinating variety of mating behaviors across species, I thought it would be illuminating for you to get some first-hand experience. I'm assigning you each a partner to observe and document the stages of a particular species' courtship rituals. You'll need to collect data on everything from initial attraction displays to, successful copulation." The class tittered and whispered excitedly. Clint felt his face heat up, already knowing where this was going. Sure enough, Trinity's hands shot up. "Professor, I volunteer to study Zalothian mating practices. With Clint." She beamed at him across the room. "I think it would be very educational for both of us." Professor Zorek peered at them over his glasses. I suppose there could be value in an interspecies perspective." "Very well, I'll allow it. But I expect you to keep things professional and academic, not exploitative. A little cross-cultural exchange never hurt anyone." Clint slumped in his seat, torn between excitement and trepidation. Knowing Trinity, there was going to be plenty of exchange, but he wasn't sure how much of it would be academic. Still, the prospect of getting an up-close and personal crash course in alien nookie was pretty thrilling. After class, Trinity bounced up to him with a mischievous grin. "Isn't this perfect? We'll ace this assignment and have a little fun along the way. I hope you're ready for a very hands-on learning experience." She linked her arm through his and steered him towards the lab. "I've already reserved us a private observation room for the project. It's got all the equipment we'll need to collect our data." She waggled her eyebrows suggestively. Clint gulped as she led him into a small, dimly lit chamber filled with plush cushions, a large view screen, and some very complicated-looking sensors and probes. Trinity immediately started stripping off her clothes. What are you doing?" Clint yelped, averting his eyes. "Getting into my research attire," Trinity replied innocently, now clad in only a sheer, shimmery robe. "If we're going to document authentic Zalothian mating behaviors, we need to set the proper mood. Dim lighting, soft music, minimal clothing. It's all part of the ritual." She tapped a control panel and the view screen lit up with a montage of Zalothian couples in various stages of courtship, from flirtatious dancing to heavy petting to... Clint quickly looked away, blushing furiously. "As you can see, it all starts with a sexy little dance to signal your interest and get your partner's pheromones flowing," Trinity narrated, swaying her hips hypnotically. "Then you move into more intimate touching and nuzzling to build the sexual tension." She demonstrated by running her hands over her curves and biting her lip, circling closer to Clint. He backed up until he bumped into the wall, his heart pounding. "Trinity, I don't think this is what Professor Zorek had in mind for data collection," he croaked. "Shouldn't we be taking notes or something?" "Oh, we will," she purred, now pressing up against him. "Very detailed, intimate notes. But first we need to establish a baseline for comparison. Work through the stages of the mating ritual ourselves, so we know what to look for." Her clever fingers found the hidden seals of his jumpsuit and began to tug it open. "It's the only way to make our observations truly scientifically rigorous. We're just being thorough researchers. For science." Clint knew he should protest, but his body had other ideas. As Trinity slipped his jumpsuit off his shoulders and began to explore his chest with her lips and tongue, all rational thought fled his brain. They were really doing this, for science. "Okay," he panted, surrendering to her ministrations. "Teach me everything. I want to be your star pupil." Trinity grinned against his skin. Good boy. Let's collect some data." Much, much later, after they had thoroughly investigated every stage of the Zalothian mating ritual, some of them twice, They lay tangled together on the cushions, breathless and glistening with sweat. Wow, Clint managed, his head still spinning. That was very educational. I'll say, Trinity giggled, tracing lazy patterns on his chest. I think we gathered some excellent material for our report. The professor will be impressed with our dedication to the subject. Clint snorted. Somehow I doubt this is what he expected when he assigned partner projects. Hey, xenobiology is a hands-on discipline, Trinity said mock seriously, and we're nothing if not committed scholars. Think of it as interspecies diplomacy of the most intimate kind. In that case, I'm happy to keep studying if it promotes galactic peace, Clint joked. For science, of course. For science, Trinity agreed, pulling him in for another kiss. And maybe a little something else too. As they lost themselves in each other again, Clint mused that this was definitely the best group project he'd ever been assigned. He couldn't wait to see what other data they would collect together. The semester was looking up. Over the next few weeks, Clint and Trinity continued their research project with great enthusiasm. They spent long hours in the lab together, meticulously documenting every nuance of Zolothian courtship behavior. At least, that's what they told themselves they were doing. In reality, their study sessions often devolved into heated makeout sessions and heavy petting, all in the name of science. Clint knew he was getting in over his head. What had started as a flirtatious game was quickly turning into something more for him. He found himself thinking about Trinity constantly, even when they weren't together. Her playful smile, her musical laugh, the way her eyes sparkled when she looked at him, he was falling for her hard. But he couldn't tell if she felt the same way. Sure, she seemed to enjoy their data collection as much as he did, but she always kept things light and playful. He didn't want to ruin their easy rapport by getting too serious too fast, especially since he still didn't fully understand Zolothian mating customs. For all he knew, this was just a casual fling for her, a way to scratch a biological itch. Speaking of biology, Trinity's behavior had become increasingly erratic lately. Some days she was all over him, practically tearing his clothes off the moment they were alone. Other times she seemed distant and distracted, barely responding to his touch. He wondered if it had something to do with her upcoming mating season. One day, as they were reviewing some particularly steamy footage of a Zolothian couple in the throes of passion, Trinity suddenly paused the video and turned to him with a serious expression. "Clint, there's something I need to tell you," she said, biting her lip nervously. "As you may have guessed, my mating period is approaching. It's a time of intense hormonal changes and heightened sexual urges for Zolothians. I may start behaving differently." Clint's heart raced. Was this her way of saying she wanted to take their relationship to the next level? "Differently how?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Trinity sighed and looked away. "I may become more aggressive in my advances, more demanding, less in control of myself. It's not uncommon for Zolothians to seek out multiple partners during this time to ensure genetic diversity." Clint felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Multiple partners? Is that all he was to her? One of many options to satisfy her biological imperative? Trinity must have seen the hurt in his eyes because she quickly took his hand. "But that's not what I want, Clint. You're more than just a mating prospect to me. I care about you deeply. I just wanted you to be prepared for what's coming, so you can make an informed decision about whether you want to continue this, whatever this is between us." Clint's head was spinning. He wanted to tell her that he was falling in love with her, that he wanted to be with her and only her, but the words stuck in his throat. He was still just a dumb human fumbling his way through the complexities of interspecies romance. I care about you too, Trinity," he managed. "I want to be there for you in whatever way you need, even if it's just as a friend." Trinity smiled softly and cupped his cheek. "I was hoping you'd say that, because I have a favor to ask. The Zolothian mating dance is an important part of our courtship ritual. It's a way for potential mates to showcase their desirability and compatibility. I was wondering if you would be my partner for the dance at the upcoming fertility festival." Clint blinked in surprise. "You want me to dance with you? In front of everyone?" "It would mean a lot to me," Trinity said earnestly. "It's a chance for us to declare our intentions publicly, to show that we choose each other, even in the midst of mating madness. Will you do it?" Clint's heart swelled. This was the sign he'd been hoping for, that their connection was more than just physical. "Of course," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I'd be honored to dance with you." Trinity beamed and kissed him deeply. "Thank you, Clint. You have no idea how much this means to me. I promise I'll make it a night you'll never forget." As they lost themselves in each other once again, Clint's mind raced with the implications of what he'd just agreed to. He was going to publicly declare his feelings for Trinity in front of the whole school, through an alien mating dance, no less. What could possibly go wrong? Little did he know the fertility festival would be even more wild and crazy than he could possibly imagine. But with Trinity by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Together they would navigate the strange and wonderful world of interspecies love, one awkward dance step at a time. The night of the fertility festival arrived, and Clint was a bundle of nerves as he got ready in his dorm room. He had no idea what to expect from a Zalothian mating celebration, but he had a feeling it would make human frat parties look tame by comparison. He had just finished squeezing into the ceremonial dance outfit Trinity had given him, a skin-tight, iridescent bodysuit that left very little to the imagination, when there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find Trinity standing there, looking absolutely stunning in a shimmery gossamer gown that clung to her every curve. Her eyes widened as she took in his getup. "Wow, you look amazing," she breathed, running a hand over his chest appreciatively. "That suit really highlights your musculature." Clint blushed and struck a pose. "I feel like a glittery sausage casing, but if it's traditional Zalothian garb, I'll wear it with pride." Trinity giggled and took his arm. "Trust me, you'll fit right in. Now come on, the festival awaits." As they made their way to the grand hall where the celebration was being held, Clint could feel a strange energy in the air. It was like the very atmosphere was charged with pheromones and sexual tension. Everywhere he looked, Zalothians were coupling up, exchanging heated glances and lingering touches. When they entered the hall, Clint's jaw dropped. It was like something out of a fever dream, a wild bacchanal of swirling colors, pulsing music, and writhing bodies. Zalothians of all shades and sizes were dancing with abandon, their shimmery skin glowing under the flashing lights. Many had already shed most of their clothes, lost in the throes of passion. Trinity grinned at his gobsmacked expression. "Welcome to mating season," she shouted over the din. "Things are about to get crazy." She led him onto the dance floor, and they were immediately swept up in the chaos. All around them, Zalothians were grinding and gyrating against each other, some in pairs, some in groups. The air was thick with the heady scent of arousal. Clint did his best to focus on Trinity as they moved together, but it was hard to ignore the sexual energy swirling around them. Everywhere he looked, there were undulating bodies and erotic displays. He felt his own body responding to the stimuli, his suit growing tighter by the minute. As they danced, Trinity's friends from class spotted them and came over to join, forming a tight circle around them. Clint recognized Zephyra and a few other familiar faces, but they all looked different, their eyes glassy with lust, their movements more sensual and aggressive. "Clint, so glad you could make it," Zephyra purred, pressing herself against his back. "Trinity's been hogging you all to herself lately. Why don't you come dance with us for a while?" Clint shot Trinity a panicked look, but she just smiled and shrugged. "Go ahead if you want. It's all part of the festival experience. Just save the last dance for me." Before he could protest, Zephyra and the others had pulled him away into their writhing mass of bodies. They surrounded him on all sides, running their hands over his chest and arms, grinding their hips against his. Clint's head was spinning with the overload of sensations. "You know, Clint, the fertility festival is a time for trying new things," Zephyra whispered in his ear. "Expanding your sexual horizons. Have you ever been with multiple partners at once?" Clint gulped and shook his head, trying to keep his composure. I'm flattered, but I'm really more of a one-woman kind of guy." Zephyr just laughed and traced a finger down his chest. "That's because you've never experienced a Zalothian orgy. Trust me, it'll blow your mind. And just think of all the juicy data we could collect for your xenobiology project." Clint's mind reeled at the thought. He had to admit, the idea of a no-holds-barred alien sex party was incredibly tempting, especially in his current state of arousal. But as he looked over at Trinity, radiant in the pulsing lights, he knew he couldn't go through with it. She was the one he wanted, mating season madness be damned. He gently but firmly extricated himself from the clutches of Zephyra and the others. "Thank you, but no. I'm here with Trinity, and I intend to stay faithful to her, even if it means missing out on the orgy of the century." The girls pouted but let him go, respecting his choice. Clint made his way back to Trinity, who beamed at him with pride and affection. "I saw what happened," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I know how hard it must have been to resist that temptation, especially with all these pheromones flying around. Thank you for staying true to me. Clint held her close and kissed her deeply. I don't want anyone else, Trinity. Just you. Mating season or not, you're the only one for me. Trinity's eyes sparkled with emotion. Oh, Clint, I feel the same way about you. Come on, let's get out of here. I think we've had enough fertility festival for one night. Hand in hand, they slipped away from the madness of the party, finding a quiet alcove to call their own. As they lost themselves in each other, Clint knew that he had made the right choice. Trinity was worth resisting any temptation, no matter how alluring. Together, they would weather the storm of mating season and come out the other side stronger than ever. Their love may have been unconventional, but it was theirs, and that was all that mattered. In the weeks following the fertility festival, Clint and Trinity's relationship only grew stronger. They were practically inseparable, spending every free moment together both in and out of the xenobiology lab. Clint had never felt so happy, so complete. Trinity was his soulmate, his partner in every sense of the word. But not everyone was thrilled about their interspecies romance. As they walked hand in hand through campus one day, Clint noticed the dirty looks and whispers from some of the other students. A few even made rude gestures or shouted slurs at them. Trinity tried to ignore it, but Clint could see the hurt in her eyes. Things came to a head when they arrived at the lab one morning to find it vandalized. Someone had spray-painted crude graffiti all over the walls. Slurs like species traitor and human fucker. Clint was livid, but Trinity just looked defeated. Maybe they're right, she said quietly, tears welling in her eyes. Maybe we're kidding ourselves, thinking this could work. A human and a Xylothian? It's just not natural. Clint took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Trinity, I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks. I love you, and that's the most natural thing in the universe. We're not going to let a bunch of small-minded bigots tear us apart. Trinity smiled through her tears and kissed him fiercely. I love you too, Clint. More than anything, I'm just scared of what we're up against. Just then, Professor Zorek entered the lab and surveyed the damage with a frown. I heard about this despicable act of vandalism. I want you both to know that I do not condone this kind of bigotry on my campus. You have my full support. Clint and Trinity were touched by his words. Thank you, Professor, Clint said, but I'm afraid this is bigger than just graffiti. There are a lot of people who don't approve of our relationship, who think it's wrong or unnatural. Professor Zorek stroked his tentacles thoughtfully. Then perhaps it's time we show them just how beautiful and natural interspecies love can be. I have an idea. He went on to explain his plan for a campus-wide symposium on xenobiology and cultural exchange. He wanted Clint and Trinity to be the keynote speakers, to share their story and their groundbreaking research on interspecies pair bonding. You two are living proof that love knows no boundaries, he said. Your relationship is a shining example of the power of empathy, understanding, and open-mindedness. If we can get others to see that, to understand and accept it, we could change the galaxy. Clint and Trinity were blown away by his vision. It was a daunting prospect, putting their love on display for all to see and judge. But if it could help break down barriers and promote peace and unity, it was worth the risk. Over the next few weeks, they threw themselves into preparations for the symposium. They compiled all their research, rehearsed their speeches, and even put together a moving visual presentation of their journey together. When the big day finally arrived, Clint was a bundle of nerves as he paced backstage in his finest suit. Trinity took his hand and squeezed it reassuringly. We've got this, love. As long as we're together, we can face anything. Hand in hand, they stepped out onto the stage to thunderous applause. As they shared their story, their love, their hopes for a brighter future, Clint could see the audience's hearts and minds opening. Tears flowed, laughter rang out, and by the end, the entire auditorium was on its feet in a standing ovation. In that moment, Clint knew that all the struggles, all the obstacles, had been worth it. Their love had the power to change the world, one open mind at a time. As he pulled Trinity into a passionate kiss right there on stage, to the cheers and whistles of the crowd, he felt like the luckiest sentient being in the universe. Their story may have started in a humble xenobiology classroom, but it had become so much more. It was a story of hope, of unity, of the incredible things that could happen when two hearts from different worlds beat as one. As they basked in the glow of love and acceptance, Clint knew that this was only the beginning. He and Trinity would continue to face challenges and prejudices, but they would face them together, armed with the unshakable bond they had forged. And as he looked out at the sea of smiling faces, at the Xylothians and humans and countless other species, all celebrating their love, He knew that a new era of peace and understanding was dawning, and he and Trinity had helped make it happen, one interspecies romance at a time.